In our previous video, we took a look at the SQ3 equipped Surface Pro 9 for general usage, and it came out looking quite good. If you haven't watched that video yet, definitely go back and watch it. But as a recap, basic productivity was great, and certain heavier use cases didn't do terribly, with the exception of it being a lower power machine, some Windows on ARM compatibility issues, which mostly seem like a developer support issue rather than a hardware issue. This is game data though. Sure, we get excited about tech for the sake of tech being tech, but we also want to know how well nifty hardware like the ARM-based Surface Pro 9 does at gaming. Well, for a couple of weeks, I've been playing with a variety of different games to try to isolate where the Surface Pro excels and where it flops hard. And if there's one thing I can tell you up front, it's to not write off the Surface Pro due to its processor. But there are other issues which might give you some pause. That pause is primarily due to compatibility issues. While I'd be willing to blame developers like Adobe and Blackmagic for the lack of availability of their software from the professional use case side, game compatibility limitations appear to lay more at the feet of Microsoft and Qualcomm. Obviously, the Microsoft SQ3 is a lower powered chip with almost non-existent VRAM, but it's also the most powerful processor on a consumer Windows on ARM machine. Unlike the other big ARM platform, macOS, Windows on ARM is still occupying only a small corner of the overall market. So I couldn't really blame developers for not specifically optimizing their games to support it. But it also means many games are bound to run through x86 emulation, adding a ton of overhead to performance. Plus, the SQ3 still doesn't have Vulkan support. Considering the Vulkan graphics API is fairly critical for smooth game performance on many machines and platforms, the lack of support leaves a real hole in compatibility that limits how much the Surface Pro 9 can actually play. That's obviously a ton of negatives if you want to play Steam games. And, well, the SQ3 just flat out doesn't have the resources to launch many games. During my testing, I tried playing Witcher 3, Doom Eternal, and Celeste, each of which gave error messages whenever I attempted to launch them. Meanwhile, Persona 4 Arena Ultimax managed to run, but froze right after the intro cinematic. Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas would also load into their initial menus, but would crash every time I tried to start to actually play a game. It's clear that this incompatibility is with Windows on ARM, not necessarily the fact that the SQ3 is low powered. Kind of like we saw when I reviewed the M1 Pro MacBook Pro. The core idea is that developers would need to update their games to be more compatible with the platform. It's just, unlike a MacBook, Steam doesn't have any built-in limitations to announce which games, if any, are optimized or might run especially poorly. Not a great start for gaming on this machine, but luckily, these compatibility issues weren't reflective of all the games I tried. In fact, most games I tried actually launched without issue. It's just that some didn't quite run that well. Resource-intensive games from the past 5 years or so do actually run on this system. They just don't look the greatest. Running Shadow of the Tomb Raider at 1080p or less on low settings does net a playable experience that can be fairly smooth. The frame rate definitely isn't getting above 30 FPS, and the lighting definitely isn't great, but you could play the game this way. Similarly, Control at 720p low, with motion blur turned off, feels smooth, with the only drawbacks being the unimpressive lighting and some graphical oddities. Those graphics issues likely stem from error messages I've received before opening some of these games, stating that the onboard Adreno GPU isn't supported. Which, that could be somewhat in the Surface Pro's favor actually. If these games are technically playable when the GPU isn't supported, maybe there's an alternate universe where these games update with support for the SQ3, and suddenly powering 1080p 30 gameplay at medium settings isn't so difficult. I would love to see that universe, but I'm not sure we'll be seeing any such updates for quite some time. Some older 3D games seem to run a bit better though. Skyrim ran smoothly at 1080p once I disabled the dozen or so mods I had enabled, which, side note, if you are super into mods via Steam, Windows on ARM might actually break some of the compatibility with them. I did test the game with some HD graphic packs loaded and it ran okay, but the frame rate wasn't as smooth. So take the power of the machine into account as well when you start enabling a ton of different mods. BioShock 2 Remastered also ran great with default settings. Gameplay was smooth and responsive with no noticeable drops in performance. The downside is that some textures looked a bit smooth and lower res. This is another one of those games that warned me of unsupported graphics. It just runs much better with less work than those heavier games. Similarly, Borderlands ran just fine, no tweaking necessary. Although the enhanced version gave me the same unsupported error as BioShock, Control, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider. But at the same time, the game looked just fine and ran smoothly, so again, it's pretty hit or miss with all these unsupported issues. I think the bottom line is, while you won't be running Elden Ring on this hyper-portable machine, you could still dig into quite a bit of your library, as long as those games are actually compatible. That's especially true for less resource-intensive games, like 2D or very light 3D games. For example, Hollow Knight managed a stable 100 plus FPS as I worked my way through the first few areas. That's pretty great, especially on a 120Hz display like the Surface Pro 9's. Likewise, Sonic Mania felt extremely responsive and incredibly punchy on the Surface Pro 9's vibrant display. Zooming through Green Hill Zone for the 100th time felt no different here than on other machines. One of the benefits I've found to playing on the Surface Pros has been that I can connect a controller, detach the keyboard, and set the tablet up anywhere with its built-in kickstand. As minor as that might seem, that flexibility is really convenient and a ton less cumbersome than gaming on other laptops. If someone bought this machine mainly as a productivity tool that they could use for some light gaming, the versatility of the form factor alone might be a killer feature. As long as they're not pushing the system too hard or expecting miracles, I think most folks would probably be more than happy with this experience. So, how about emulation? Qualcomm's mobile chips have been fantastic for emulating a variety of different consoles on smartphones. On mobile platforms, the likes of Wii U and PS3 emulation are probably a bit too much right now. But Wii, Gamecube, PS2, they all work fine. Considering the SQ3 shares some DNA with the 8 series Snapdragon chips, it's not too wild to expect similar results. However, it's a bit hard to fully let the SQ3 stretch its legs due to compatibility issues, with the main culprits here being the lack of Vulkan support and use of compatibility layers for common frameworks like OpenGL. Attempting to launch RPCS3 creates an error message saying that a Vulkan file wasn't detected, and attempting to launch a game via Citra provided an OpenGL issue. The x86 version of Cemu did actually launch, but running various games only yielded gray or white screens with some audio running in the background. It seemed clear that the games were actually running, it's just the video wasn't being displayed. N64 emulation also, oddly enough, proved cumbersome, as the Mupen 64 core and RetroArch via Steam resulted in some crashes while trying to load a game. The standalone Project 64 emulator at least ran a game, but emulation was so sluggish that I wouldn't call it playable. All of these are hopefully issues that get smoothed out over time, either with Microsoft and Qualcomm beefing up compatibility with graphics APIs in future chipsets, or from the natural course of development of these emulators. But for now, that basically means PS3, Wii U, 3DS, and N64 emulation aren't very feasible on this device. If you can look past that though, you're gonna have a great time. DS games ran great via Melon DS, despite it not being a native program. I was able to play Meteos with a Surface Pen without any feelings of sluggishness, and New Super Mario Bros. Felt as smooth as ever. PPSSPP has an ARM64 version for PSP emulation and predictably ran very well while testing. God of War Chains of Olympus failed to stutter while I hacked and slashed my way through the first level, and Loco Roco looked fantastic on the Surface Pro's display. Duck Station also performed really well with PS1 emulation. Crash Bandicoot 2 ran full speed with no hiccups at 6x native resolution. No complaints here. I also tested SNES, GBA, and Genesis, and there are basically no other issues with retro emulation beyond the odd experience I had trying to make N64 games run. Moving on to GameCube and Wii emulation, Dolphin actually has an ARM64 version that had a few iterations in beta so far. While using the program, I have experienced some rare random crashes while navigating through menus, but that might be expected of a beta release. I also found that enabling VSync was necessary to get smoother frame rates and full-speed gameplay. Not sure why it's so critical, but it's no hassle to keep it enabled. For testing purposes, I tried Mario Kart Double Dash, Super Mario Sunshine, and Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. At 3x native resolution, Double Dash ran full speed and 60 FPS during races. I did experience an occasional frame drop, but it felt infrequent enough that it didn't pull me out of the action. Super Mario Sunshine generally ran perfectly, but did experience more speed drops overall. Though it still felt perfectly playable at 3x, even despite its terrible camera controls. Paper Mario felt a little rougher with infrequent stutters and graphical glitches. Having played through the game recently on my Steam Deck via Dolphin, I will say that some graphics issues are expected, just due to general ROM compatibility. They did feel slightly more prevalent here though, albeit without ruining the playability of the game. For Wii emulation, I did have to drop down to 2x resolution to get Sonic Colors running at full speed, but when it did, it felt great through the first few levels. Likewise, Smash Bros. Brawl and New Super Mario Bros. Wii felt extremely fluid and responsive while looking great on the Surface Pro's display. The fact that there's so few downsides to provide for GameCube and Wii emulation is an incredibly good sign for what the SQ3 is actually capable of when it's running an optimized application. Which is what made PS2 emulation such a hassle. The go-to PS2 emulator for Windows, PCSX2, does not have an ARM64 version available. It still runs through x86 emulation on the Surface Pro, but that extra overhead tanks performance. Even at the lowest resolutions, I couldn't get Ratchet & Clank to run full speed. That's a real shame, considering how well other emulators had been doing. Luckily, before it ceased development, an ARM64 version of Aether SX2 was released. Considering how poorly PCSX2 ran, Aether SX2 for Windows on ARM feels like straight up magic. At up to 5x resolution, Ratchet & Clank runs at full speed with no stutters. Soul Calibur 2 had slightly worse performance, but dropping the rendering to 3x native smoothed everything out. That's a really good sign for anyone who wants to dive deep into their PS2 collection. In general, I've found performance to be above what I'd even get on my Fold 4. Both devices have similar chipsets, but I found that my Fold 4 would just about overheat if I tried to crank up the graphics this high for a long duration. After playing for a bit at a higher resolution, the Surface Pro 9 does get pretty warm, but it's only been noticeable if I actually reach up and feel the back of the computer. There have been no real hits to performance here. But yeah, overall PS2 emulation is probably the best I've seen so far on just about any computer. Bringing everything together, PC games appear to run just fine on the ARM-based Surface Pro 9 as long as they don't have any compatibility breaking issues and they're not extremely resource-intensive games. You know, the kind that make regular x86 laptops with integrated graphics sweat as well. All things considered, emulation is also very good. Minus some compatibility issues with RPCS3, CMU, Citra, and N64 emulation, performance seems to be a step above what modern smartphones with an 8 series chip can offer. Combined with a really solid display and larger surface area to dissipate heat, it makes for an extremely solid emulation device. For what it is, I really like this machine, even if it can't fully replace my Steam Deck. But, you know, honestly, no one should buy this expensive computer just to play games. Heck, if you want to tinker with Windows on ARM gaming, go check out the dev kit. It has basically the same processor, only costs $600, and comes with both more RAM and USB ports. However, if you're looking for an impressively portable productivity machine that you can also do some light gaming on, the Surface Pro 9 might be for you. What it loses out on compared to other Windows laptops, it makes up for in its versatile form factor and a battery that wouldn't die if you look at it too hard. Those are my thoughts though. What are yours? Given the form factor and price remain the same, what level of performance would convince you to consider a Surface Pro 9 as a gaming machine? Are you the type of person who really leans on their laptop for intense games? Or is the current performance actually enough to satisfy your needs? Let me know down in the comments. And next week, we'll be discussing the one angle where I think the Surface Pro 9 with 5G excels above most other laptops on the market: cloud gaming. So make sure to get subscribed so you don't miss out. Also, as always, if you found this video helpful or informative, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. That's all for this video though. Until next time, catch you later.